Instead of adding more amendments, why don't we repeal a couple, like the 16th and 17th?
Well, we could, but here's the problem. We want to get successes, okay? We want to get successes, and we've got in our own, in our own. I'm a Republican, more conservative, but I call myself an ally of liberty, okay? And that's what I do. I don't call people Democrats or anything. Enemies of liberty, friends of liberty type thing. So those are good, but a lot of people don't understand 17th Amendment, 16th Amendment. And the lowest hanging fruit right now is either term limits or balanced budget amendment, where people can just get it. 70% of the polling McLaughlin group around the country, people understand they've got to balance their books. And so this is like the slavery issue, where it's a moral issue and it can catch fire because people understand it. Then
why don't we take a leadership role and educate people on the 17th Amendment?
Well,
the need to repeal it.
Yeah, we need to do that. Listen, I'm one that believes in it, and one of the heartbreaks I have is that the states themselves led that effort to lose our own 17th Amendment. They gave up their own powers. It's going to be very difficult. But as Scalia said, I think the lower hanging fruit is the balanced budget, and that's why. But I'd be a fighter for both. Okay? Yes, sir.
Just to play devil's advocate, wasn't there some corruption that as to why the states decided to give up their power to elect senators?
Well, there were people, and Shane could comment more than I on this, but in the different states there were criticisms of corruption, and they'd rather focus it all in one group. But my point is, I'd rather have the corruption spread out than focused in one group. And we're easier to be able to handle that stuff. Yes, sir.
You said that setting things on the right course is going to be hard and it's going to hurt. I happen to think that the sooner we get to it, the least amount it's going to be hard and the least it's going to hurt.
I agree. I think it's only going to get harder. Historically, there's never been a country with our kind of wealth, that has nobody to save it on this brink. And I'd rather land the plane at a point of our choosing rather than it just to stop somewhere where we're unsure of.
Low-hanging fruit. I believe the 17th would be the lowest hanging fruit.
The what's that?
The 17th.
Okay. That's an argument, but, look, for those who are educated, we can see that might be, but in the general populace, I got to tell you, it's so spun about, okay, you're taking the power away from the people in this. It can so easily be spun for those who do not understand a Republican form of government. Yeah, you're taking away democracy, which is what our founders wanted to stay away from. Yes, sir.
Hey, Jeff, one of the things I think that people are missing with this last election, we love to talk about gaining more power in the House. We love to talk about taking over the Senate. But when we talk about Article 5, which the most critical issue facing us is the states rising up and taking their place as sovereign states to roll back the federal and the judiciary, we took over houses. We have the most conservative number of legislators and governors that we've ever had. If there was ever a time to move forward with an Article 5, it's now.
That's right.
And it is an amendment process. It's not a con-con. That defies 200 years of history. We've had 17 amendments to this Constitution, not all of them good, right. All done by Congress, though. So your comments on the strength, again, timing is everything. So I'd like to hear your comments on, because I believe the time is now. And I believe it was set up for now.
I agree. Look, since this last election, there are 30 red states from top to bottom, governor, both houses. There are only 8 blue states from top to bottom. The rest are divided. Now, West Virginia, quick story, there was a bumper sticker on somebody's car, and this was riding around and said 82 years is enough. And I heard a friend of mine's mom was 82 years old and was following that and thought it was like an Obamacare death panel thing, like, oh no, they're going to get me at 82. Okay, true story. But it was 82 years of having their legislature tied up with the enemies of liberty, and they'd finally come back around. I think it's very critical that we jump on this, and I also think that if we present this right, like Lincoln did the slavery issue, and have it become a moral issue, capture the moral high ground, and shame people into not doing this. I mean, at Lincoln's Washington Day speech, he talked about this is the way to win battles. You know, even if it's wearing a bonnet, and everybody thinks it's funny, well, he was going to get everybody to wear bonnets till it became in vogue, and everybody be embarrassed not to wear them. Yes. Oh, go ahead. Ann?
Okay. I'd like to ask Senator Pierce actually how we could get past Andy Biggs, who just says, okay, if this hits, I'm going to tear it up and throw it in the drawer, which is what he did. What do we do now? How can we, what is the strategy for the next session?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. You know, Andy is a very, very personal friend of mine, and we have had this debate. And I believe he's wrong, like you, Jeff. I don't think he understands. And again, like I told Andy, I said, and you have to take it to a moral issue, as well as because he's worried about the risk. You know, like you said, of course there's risk. But are the risks worth it? Yes. And I've had this debate with him, and I kind of almost impugned him a little bit, and he's still reeling from it. When I said, Andy, you can't believe the Constitution was divinely given to us. The God had his hand in the making of America, but he made a mistake on Article 5. You know, it was not divinely given. They knew exactly what they were doing, and he told me, and I share this with you because told me how committed he is to stopping it. He said he would rather be removed as president of the Senate to allow that to go forward. So how do you get past Andy? As much as I love Andy, the only way you can get past Andy is when he's not president of the Senate.
And Senator, I have read his book. I've done a whole, outline on rebutting things that he said, and there's a lot of things in there that could be countered. I don't know how to get to him either, but I think it's a groundswell from the people demanding that. And at some point, he's got to become more Franklin-esque, saying, look, there's things in this thing that I don't like, but I've got to defer to other people's opinion. And as I get older, I recognize more looking back that I might have been wrong. I wish he'd have that because he's on the wrong side of history right now. Yes, sir.
Just want to talk a little bit about the risks. You mentioned that 30 states
Yes.
have both houses and governor. And governor, 30 states. We're one of those.
We are.
However, we are not all red. There are senators in the Senate that are Democrats. There are
And
representatives.
we need them too.
We have representatives in the House that they're Republicans representatives, but they're Democrats. So when you talk about the risks, when we're not all united as a party, when we're not adhering to our principles, when we can be bought, then you've got some additional risks.
Sure.
When it comes to, I still hold my original position that it's better to repeal rather than to add more. The 17th Amendment being repealed will add so many more checks and balances.
Okay, but if you're going to repeal that, you would also need to go through the states to do it because the federal government's never going to do it.
Absolutely.
So you're proving one of my points here is the compact is meant to be the vehicle. The payload can be whatever we want.
Let's do a compact of a 17th
Then
Amendment repeal.
and that's something that can be done. Again, I would throw my weight behind it, but we only have so much time and energy and this kind of thing. And because of Jefferson's talk and Reagan and the financial situation we're in and the moral turpitude and educating the public and have them understand and capturing the moral high ground, we just disagree on what should come first.
And I quote my good friend Russell here at the debate several months ago where he says, some of my best friends are on both sides of this argument.
Yeah, no, and it is. But I
And-
don't think we ought to not talk about it because it's splitting. I think we need to have this open debate amongst people who are very well informed and have this hashed out and the idea. I mean, I have been disinvited from very important sovereignty groups because they're worried about divisiveness. Now, I'm a bridge builder. I'm not a Ralph Naderite, but I do believe, he's like, look, we need to build coalitions. Look what we did with Stalin in World War II. You know, look what the founders did. They decided we got to throw off England, and then they duked it out about between the federals how we're going to govern ourselves. You know, we need to come together on some of these issues and recognize the common ground we have, that the federal government's runaway. And you want something risky, that's Congress right now sitting. I mean, it is controlled a little bit more by the Allies of Liberty, but we're still in a very precarious position. Oh, we have somebody back here first, and then I'll get Ralph.
I just want to know, many of us talk about the fact that we cannot get Article 5 past Andy Biggs. Having been somebody who had to go through Andy to get a bill done a couple of years ago, and it took us years to get it done, how many of you are constantly calling him and calling your representatives to make it happen? Because that's what it took for us. It took 17 insurance and financial agents to actually call the reps every day, every hour, for 3 years, and have them go and visit Andy every day to tell him we want this bill done. With that, finally for him to say, enough is enough, have your bill. I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
But how many of us are doing that for this?
Yeah. Yeah, and we need to, and I know I have. I certainly know I have. And, you know, I'd always be available, you know, in any groups. What my goal is to get around the state to educate the people, so they will make these calls, that they'll understand the definition of freedom, what it is to be an American, what our tools our founders gave. I'm also willing to educate legislators, and I know many of them are educated. I'm very impressed with what they know. But these are the kind of things that we can use and get out. Okay? I know we're running late on time.
One more question.
Okay.
I know Jeff will be hanging out a little bit, right?
Yeah, I'll hang out a little bit.
Okay, there's a guy who wrote an article recently in the Wall Street Journal advocating civil disobedience. And the way that he suggests doing it is, I think, very clever, and it's putting the power back into the hands of the people. He says that groups like maybe the Dental Association or maybe the Association of Realtors, what they can do is they can choose particular things that are being that egregiously wrong that the government is trying to enforce, and they create inside their group a kind of an insurance policy. So if the federal government is going to sue one of their members, there's $1 million or $2 million available to fight that suit. And they just tie them up in court, and they do it over and over again until that law goes away.
Well, you know, there's different ways of thought on that, and I certainly think when it gets ratcheted to that point, we need to think about it. But in Lincoln's first very public speech, called the Lyceum speech, which is beautiful if you guys want to read it, it's exactly what's happening today. He said if he wants to tear down the republic, what he would first do is create unlawfulness. Okay, because what happens with unlawfulness is people then start to have a disregard for the government and lack respect. Exactly. And then there's but the Lyceum speech, if anybody wants to look that up and read, it's beautiful. It's almost like a prophecy in how one would kind of go down the list of becoming a tyrannical type government. Thank you very much for having me. Talked a long time. Appreciate your time.